Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, more talks or more war? Failed negotiations between the U.S. and Iran leave Iran's nuclear program intact and control of the Strait of Hormuz in dispute. And remembering the Holocaust, one man redeems his family's Nazi heritage, and a German family in Israel supports elderly Holocaust survivors. Plus, a prophetic view on the war with Iran from Pastor Hank Kunneman. All this and more coming up on this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Julie Stahl. I'm joined today by our correspondent, Paul Petit. Welcome, Paul.
Thanks so much, Julie. Always good to be here.
As Israel pauses today to remember one of history's darkest chapters, tensions are rising in the Middle East. The U.S. has begun a naval blockade on the Strait of Hormuz after talks with the Islamic Republic of Iran failed.
And that brings the region into an uncertain period of either more talks or renewed war. Here's the latest on these and other stories.
After 21 hours of negotiations, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance announced the talks with Iran failed.
The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement. And I think that's bad news for Iran, much more than it's bad news for the United States of America.
Flying back from Florida to Washington, D.C., President Trump had this to say about further talks with Iran.
No, I don't care if they come back or not. If they don't come back, I'm fine. And remember, their promise was that they were going to open the Hormuz Strait. They didn't do it. They lied.
The key sticking point continues to be Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons.
We understand the situation better than anybody. And Iran's in very bad shape. And just so you understand, Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. Will not have. There is no way that they're going to get.
Trump also says Iran cannot control the Strait of Hormuz and U.S. forces will impose a blockade beginning today. Central Command adding that the action will not impede ships sailing to and from other countries. Iran is accusing the U.S. of piracy and threatening retaliation against any ships that approach the strait. The president also criticized Pope Leo, who has called for an end to the war.
We don't like a pope that's going to say that it's okay to have a nuclear weapon. We don't want a pope that says crime is okay in our cities. I don't like it. I'm not a big fan of Pope Leo.
The Pope says he doesn't want to get into a debate with Trump, but believes he needs to say something.
I do not look at my role as being a political politician. I don't want to get into a debate with him, and I will continue to speak out loud against war. Too many people are suffering in the world today. Too many innocent people are being killed, and I think someone has to stand up and say there's a better way to do this.
While visiting troops in southern Lebanon, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu says a new Middle East is emerging as they begin talks with Lebanon for the first time in 43 years.
One of the things we're seeing here is that we have essentially changed the face of the Middle East. Our enemies, Iran and the axis of evil, came to destroy us, and now they're simply fighting for their survival.
Joshua Swanson, CBN News, Jerusalem. Israel is pausing to observe Holocaust Remembrance Day with solemn ceremonies beginning at Yad Vashem and continuing across the country. A nationwide siren brings the country to a standstill for 2 minutes as Israelis remember the victims of the Holocaust. 6 Holocaust survivors are lighting memorial torches, honoring the memory of the 6 million Jews murdered during one of history's darkest chapters. This year's observance is marked by a new report from Israel's Diaspora Affairs Ministry revealing a surge in anti-Semitism around the world. Nearly 1,000 incidents have been reported over the past year targeting Jewish communities. In the United States alone, more than 300 incidents reported, with over 130 cases each in the United Kingdom and France. Globally, dozens of physical assaults and hundreds of acts of vandalism have been documented. 20 died in anti-Semitic attacks last year, 15 of them in the massacre at Bondi Beach, Australia, last December. In his address marking the day, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu focused on Europe, delivering a warning about a growing moral and cultural crisis across the continent.
Europe today is afflicted by deep moral weakness. Europe is losing control of its identity, of its values, of its responsibility to defend civilization against barbarism.
He went on to say that Israel is defending Europe, a reference to the war against the Iranian regime and its attempt to build a nuclear weapon. In the Persian Gulf, the United States is carrying out a targeted naval operation in the Strait of Hormuz, working to secure the critical waterways while keeping global trade moving. U.S. forces are clearing sea mines laid by Iran, and commercial vessels from other nations are once again passing through. President Trump said 34 ships went through the Strait of Hormuz yesterday, which is by far the highest number since this foolish closure began. The strategy allows international shipping to continue, while a targeted blockade restricts vessels tied to Iranian ports, increasing pressure on Tehran without shutting down the flow of global energy. He underscored the stakes of the operation.
We can't let a country blackmail or extort the world, because that's what they're doing. They're really blackmailing the world. We're not going to let that happen.
The president also indicated that the right people inside Iran have reached out, suggesting there may still be an opening for diplomatic negotiations.
We've been called this morning by the right people, the appropriate people, and they want to work a deal.
Despite ongoing talks, gaps remain, as Iran has reportedly offered to suspend uranium enrichment for 5 years, while the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance is pushing for a 20-year halt. Meanwhile, Israeli and Lebanese leaders are meeting in Washington today to discuss resolving Israel's conflict with Hezbollah in the south. Hezbollah's leader says it won't abide by any agreement, and the Iranian proxy continues launching rockets into northern Israel. Back here in Jerusalem, I'm at the entrance to the Old City, the Jaffa Gate, and at 10 a.m. the sirens will sound and the entire country of Israel will stop for 2 minutes in remembrance of the 6 million Jews who died in the Holocaust. Joshua Swanson, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Still ahead, forging a different path, the grandson of a Nazi officer tells his story.
And from there, my journey began in a
So how did that affect your looking, the way you looked at the Jewish people, the Holocaust?
Yeah, of course, when you come to faith, suddenly I saw what is this Israel and Israel and Jerusalem, and it was interesting. But when this happened, it came to the past, the 70 years, not the 2,000 years. So 70 years. So suddenly I found myself with a responsibility of kind of looking in. But the key moment was when I had a friend from Israel who came to the Christians to talk about God's heart for Israel. And he said something profound. He said, what the devil meant for evil, God can turn out for good. Can turn out.
Now, and your wife also had played a part in this too, didn't she?
She found out that there are in Israel in this time 250,000 Holocaust survivors that are still living in Israel, and they're very poor because they're coming from the ex-Soviet Union. When they come, they lose everything. They are maybe academics and teachers, and they start with cleaning toilets. It was a big wow. So we found an organization to invest everything to help the elderly, the Holocaust survivors that were children in the Holocaust, now immigrated to Israel, and to support them in different ways.
And how did they respond to you?
I have the grandson,
Mantle?
It's easier for them to relate with me as with the old elderly generations of German. It's really the little gap of grandson, because they can differentiate. They always say it was not you, and I have to say yes, but we have a responsibility, and we do it out of free will. So we never had rejection. In opposite, I say always, I have in Israel maybe now 50 grandmas and 50 Jewish granddads.
Wow. And one of them gave you a special present one time.
Yes. After the event with my grandfather and after a long journey that brought us to Israel, it was at an event, a very dear Holocaust survivor. She is the leader of an organization who takes care of thousands of Holocaust survivors. She said, I brought a very special gift for you, Alex. And she opened up a little box, and inside it was a medal. A medal over 75 years victory over Nazi Germany.
Wow.
And from there, I connected the circle to my grandfather. I rejected his heritage of my physical grandfather, but I accepted with honor the heritage of my Jewish grandma. And this was a circle that was closed in a way. I saw the purpose of our being here, supporting Israel, supporting the elderly, the Holocaust survivors, in the responsibility we have as Germans, as believers, and this is what we're running for.
It's a very inspiring story. Thank you so much, Alexander Dietze, for joining us on Jerusalem Dateline.
Thank you for having me.
Up next, as Israel marks Holocaust Remembrance Day, one German family helps survivors in Israel. In our next story, 3 generations of a German family, along with volunteers, offer love and comfort to those who endured the Holocaust.
CBN Israel partners with this family to provide a sanctuary of compassion and grace for Israeli survivors. Here's the story.
The Beit Eliezer nursing home on Israel's northern border is a lot more than a place of care. It's a legacy of a family's desire to serve the people of Israel.
She's very happy in here, and the treatment is very special. And for the Holocaust survivor, it's just a very unique place.
Most of this place is run by volunteers from Germany. The residents live here, so we treat it like it's their home. That's why we try to address each person's needs individually.
German believers come to volunteer at Beit Eliezer because they believe in this sacred mission to serve.
They remember the song lyrics so well. I sat on the piano and played some Hebrew songs. One of the women who lives here, she started singing so loud, and another woman, she had like a really happy face, and I asked her, do you also want to sing? And she, said yes.
Throughout the Beit Eliezer journey, 3 Bear family generations have carried this mission through wars and many losses. The biggest one of them was Gideon's son, killed while serving in the Israeli army.
When he was killed, people were exposed to a Christian soldier who fought for them. Why? It doesn't add up. He didn't have to, but he still went, doing something out of love. If God loves me and God loves his people, how committed am I to loving his people, and where is the limit? I think for my son there was no limit.
CBN Israel is honored to support this program. At the moment when Gideon's family are in need of comforting in the midst of their own loss, they continue comforting others at Beit Eliezer.
CBN support the organization, and they help us carry out all the activities we do here. We're very grateful to them, and we want to thank them so much for all their help. We hope we can continue moving forward together.
Wow, Paul, that's a special story of redemption, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, I love the part about the clinician talking about how she got at the piano, started playing, and they started singing along in Hebrew. That's got to be touching and amazing and almost surreal, for these patients all this time.
Yeah, and here we are on Holocaust Remembrance Day, and there's just so much pain from the past, but to see someone at least doing what they can to give is really, really special, and CBN Israel is also part of that.
Yeah, amazing stuff.
When we come back, men on a mission encouraging war-stricken Israelis and a prophetic perspective on the war with Iran.
Just days before the U.S.-Israel military action against Iran, dozens of dedicated men traveled to Israel to help people in the recovery from more than 2 years of war. Our Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl caught up with them in northern Israel.
Sponsored by the Jewish National Fund USA, the Brotherhood Mission, these men raised funds for projects throughout the country and also came to serve.
We have essentially 2 goals. One is to perform as many acts of loving kindness to our brothers and sisters in Israel, and 2, to raise as much money as possible for those brothers and sisters in Israel.
Group founder and chairman Steve Katz started the mission in 2024 due to feelings of solidarity with the Jewish people after October 7th.
So the guys that come, they are special because they really, truly, in their hearts, feel the connection with the people of Israel and the land of Israel. The last 3 years, we bring about 35 to 45 guys each year, and we've raised $5 million to date on those 3 trips.
Co-chairman Michael Siegel sees the project's growth and the fruit of their labor as significant, as more than 60% of Israelis suffer from post-traumatic stress or ongoing trauma.
Well, most Israelis will ask, what are you doing here? And then when we tell them we're here on a mission, we've raised some money in the U.S. and we're here just to support them and love them, you'll often see times they'll hug you and tears will roll down their face.
This is a community of MAjeruz, nestled in the hills of the Galilee. They've opened up this beauty to bring hope and healing to veterans struggling with PTSD. CBN News met up with the group 2 days before Operation Roaring Lion began. They heard from Tal Shoham, who spent 505 days in Hamas captivity. He praised the group for leaving their families at such an uncertain time.
And they're really incredible people that actually want to do good in the world. And we came here to see a PTSD project that works with the military personnel that suffer from PTSD and can come to here and start their recovery in a really special way.
Shoham believes treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder could be Israel's next contribution to the world. Max Schachter is one of the participants. His 14-year-old son, Alex, was murdered in the 2018 Parkland school shooting.
We're here to help a lot of these families that have lost their children and their loved ones. We're all in a club that nobody ever wants to be part of.
Schachter hopes to keep his son's memory alive by helping others.
Just because the war with Gaza is over, the suffering is not. And we have so many people that are still suffering from trauma and PTSD, and that's why we're so glad that we're here.
Mark Cantor has traveled here 3 times since October 7th.
So I came to Israel to support it in its time of need, to do charity and acts of loving kindness. And I believe that it's in America's best interest to support our strongest ally, which is Israel, which is why I have this flag. But I believe those that bless Israel are blessed.
Rich Wolkowitz agrees it's in America's best interest. He says Israel needs emotional and material support, and he feels very connected to Christians.
As an American, it's so important to support our allies, and we're under attack as a Judeo-Christian nation. The Israelis truly appreciate our support. We've got people here who are focused on healing and helping and contributing back to the world.
Born and raised in Israel, Gadi Ilan now lives in the U.S. As a young man during his regular army service, Ilan took part in the Entebbe operation, rescuing more than 100 Israeli and Jewish hostages held on a plane hijacked by Palestinian terrorists.
Our job is to help them and give them the tools and give them the means and give them the support. And a group like this is what they do.
Next trip, they hope Christian men will join them.
There's plenty of Christian Zionists in the United States that support what we do, and that outreach and that support is as important as anything else to keep the state of Israel alive.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Ma'ale Northern Israel. Many are asking, is the war with Iran just another conflict in the Middle East, or does it carry a deeper significance? CBN's Paul Petit spoke with Pastor Hank Kuhneman, who shares his biblical and prophetic perspective. Here's their conversation.
Well, Pastor Hank, thanks so much for being with us today. You know, from a prophetic standpoint, how do you view the war going on right now with Iran, and what scriptures do you point people to when you're having this discussion?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, Ezekiel 7, verse 26 says that when disasters or rumors are in the earth, that people will begin to speak or look for a prophetic understanding. And so right now, this war that's going on in Iran really is God coming to the earth at this time, doing something that he's always done through history, and that is deal with the tyrants of the earth. We see that through the Bible, through history with Pharaoh and others. And so God once again is visiting them because of an important principle. And it's this, Paul. There comes a time, we know this with Israel's history, where the burdens, the oppression was so great that God intervened at that moment because of the cries of the people that were coming up into the ears of the Lord. So this is what's happening in Iran. God is setting the people free because of their cries, and he's dealing with Daniel 7. Taking down kings and setting up new kings. That's why we saw a regime change in process.
Now, a lot of people would say, obviously, Israel has seen a lot of conflict over the years, a lot of wars, a lot of violence. So what makes this particular conflict different than others where many people said, well, it's happening now? Because you're saying it's happening now. So how do we mitigate all that?
That's a great point. You know, I think a lot of times when people look at the events of the earth, they have to be careful that they get out of speculation. Jesus even told us, he said, there are going to be times in the last days, you're going to hear wars, rumors of wars, but the end's not yet. Then he said there will be nations that rise against nation. But he said this is the beginning of birth pains. There's going to be painful things. And sometimes people interpret that as this is the end or this is that event. But then we have to remember there's a principle. And Jesus taught us when men's heart failed them for fear, Luke 21, because of the things that are on the earth, look up, because your redemption draws nigh. In other words, God has a redemptive plan as long as the Spirit's in the earth. So I say that you have to look at what's happening in Israel and look at what is called the God factor. You have to look at God's redemptive plan, and that is a plan of help and hope for the people of Israel. But really, it's more than that. This is the global reset that God is bringing at this time to bring reversal so that a great awakening can come and Acts 2 can be fulfilled, and that is that the Lord is going to pour out His Spirit upon all flesh. What we have to do is be careful not to gravitate to the negative, because you have the natural and the spiritual that play out. I'll give a quick example. Acts 2 said that there'll be blood, fire, vapor of smoke. Well, those are natural events, but then also the blood represents salvation, awakenings. Fire represents revival, and the smoke represents, from the spiritual sense, the covering of God visiting the earth. And that's exactly what God is doing at this time. And we need to rejoice and look for what God's doing and not so much gravitate over into fear and to that which is false.
Now, right now, there's a lot of prayer going out for regime change going on in Iran. That is the hope. The underground church, which has been underground for many, many years, needs to come to the surface. Where do our prayers need to focus for such a time as this when it comes to that?
Well, I think, again, we always want to make sure that we pray for something that is the most powerful force and restraint in the earth. It is the Spirit of God. And we have that authority in the earth to call upon God to protect the innocent, to release the suffering, and watch this, break the power of the enemy who seeks to steal, kill, and destroy. So I think that needs to be our focus, is we really not only speak for the peace of Jerusalem, but we pray for the restraining hand of God to come against the enemy and to protect the people.
That's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember to follow us on social media. Please keep praying for wisdom for our leaders, President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, and for the best possible outcome for the people of Iran and all of the Middle East.
And pray for protection for Israel and for the peace of Jerusalem and for the Israeli soldiers still in battle in northern Israel.
And remember, the God who's watching over Israel and you and me neither slumbers nor sleeps. I'm Julie Stahl. For Paul and me and all of us here at the Jerusalem Bureau, we'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.
I'm investigative filmmaker Tim Mahoney, and my investigation continues for the true location of Mount Sinai. Follow me and Exodus Explorers on a search for more biblical evidence.
These are the 12 stones?
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4.
At this place, something very important happened.
There was so much evidence. It felt like I walked into
something that was 3,500 years old, undisturbed.
The characteristics of Mount Sinai described in the Bible match the characteristics of a volcano exactly.
How could Moses have ascended a mountain into an active volcanic eruption?
When Moses thought he went to Midian, why haven't scholars looked in Midian in Saudi Arabia?
Because they can't. That's why.
What risk would these Exodus explorers be willing to take to prove the Bible? After 5 years, he made a desperate decision.
He made a desperate decision.
That just kind of poisoned the well for everyone else doing to do scientific work in the area, and they put fences up and keep people away.
This Jeep roared up and 3 desert policemen jumped out, and these guys are waving these AK-47s right in the faces of my children and just screaming, "Get out of here."
We can't get into the area, but we can see what we need to see through the fence.
They stumbled upon something that was pretty unique.
Is this the holy altar where God made a covenant with the nation of Israel?
They didn't use it for sacrificing animals. What else would you use it for?
Once I realized what this site was, my knees.
Have they found the mountain of God where Moses received the 10 Commandments?
Why would you go to church every week? Why would you pray? Why would you look forward to the future if the whole foundation of what you are doing this for is fiction?
This is some of the most amazing, awe-inspiring, foundational, miraculous acts of the Lord throughout the entire scriptures.
Join me as I conclude my 20-year search for which mountain best matches the biblical event in Patterns of Evidence, Journey to Mount Sinai, Part 2.
Op het plein waar vele echtparen rondliepen met hun baby's die opgedragen werden aan de Heere God, kwam opeens Simeon geleid door de Heilige Geest bij hen en later ook Anna. Anna was al vele jaren een weduwvrouw. Het was moeilijk voor de weduwen in die tijd, maar zij koos ervoor om een deel van de oplossing te zijn door haar tijd te vullen met aanbidding en vasten in de tempel. En Anna en Simeon loofden beide de Heere in dat kleine kindje. Dit is zoiets heerlijks, want Anna is niet alleen daar gebleven om het kindje te aanbidden. Zij is ook weggegaan met een boodschap voor het Joodse volk. Er is altijd een gelovig overblijfsel geweest in Israël. En zij vertelde hen van de vertroosting van Israël. De enige troost, de enige ware troost voor het Joodse volk is de Heer Jezus. En Anna ging het doorvertellen aan hen die ook met de Messiasverwachting leefden. Anna's naam betekent genade, mooiste woord uit de Bijbel. En zij kwam uit een van de 10 stammen, Asher, wat gelukkig betekent, of vreugdevol. Wel, door dit alles werd het hart van Maria steeds rijker. En dat is ook met ons, die wandelen in geloof. We krijgen een rijk hart en een privéleven met de Heer.